Take Back Your Health Now, Episode 16. You're listening to the Take Back Your Health Now podcast, the show that interviews the top doctors, athletes, trainers, and entrepreneurs to help you find the Holy Grail of health. Now here's your host, Dr. Dan Margolin.
Hi, this is Dr. Dan Margolin with another episode of Take Back Your Health Now, where we pull out all the stops in search of health's Holy Grail. We are excited to have Mr. Jonathan Horton. He is a motivational speaker and American Olympic athlete. Jonathan competed in the 2008 Beijing Olympics, winning silver and bronze in gymnastics. He also competed in the 2011 Olympic Games, in addition to being featured on American Ninja Warrior. Jonathan, welcome to the program.
Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it.
It's awesome. So, Jonathan, just give us an idea. What physical, mental preparation goes into being an Olympic athlete?
Oh, man, that's a pretty loaded question. You know, there is a lot that goes into wanting to be an Olympian. I mean, my dream kind of started when I was about 9 years old, watching the 96 Olympic Games on TV, and kind of decided that's what I want to do. And, you know, I was a really committed person. You know, I trained hard. I took a lot of pride in my work ethic. You know, I'll say that a lot of my success came from really, I wasn't the most talented guy around. I would say most of my success really came from just being able to grind it out. I put in a lot of time and effort behind the scenes in terms of research and how much I learned about health and nutrition and, you know, other types of training methods. And, you know, I'm kind of an all in or nothing kind of person.
Right.
So, you know, I believe in visualization. I believe in intense planning. So, you know, definitely a lot went into it.
I mean, what were you as a kid? Like, how did you get into just training in general? How did you get into gymnastics as a kid? Were you naturally drawn to that or?
Yeah, well, story. I got my start when I was 4 years old. And I don't actually remember this story. My mom tells it to me all the time. But so sorry, Mom, I got to tell the story, but she lost me in the middle of a Target department store. And I guess like 15 minutes goes by. She has the entire store searching for her little 4-year-old son. And the manager comes up to her and says, "Hey, man, we've spotted your son. Calm down." He's like, "Look up." Apparently there was a support beam in the middle of the store that was about 25 feet tall, and I climbed it to the ceiling.
Oh my God.
So, so my mom goes home and tells my dad about this story, and he's like, "Wow, our son's a freak. We should put him in gymnastics or something." So, you know, the rest is history from there. I got my start and I started competing when I was 6. And then, like I said, I really committed to it when I was around 9 years old. Even at 9, everybody's like, "Wow, you committed to the Olympics at 9?" I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I'm a super competitive guy. I knew what I wanted early on in life." And, you know, I feel like I did gymnastics right. You know, I did the club program, and then I went through high school gymnastics and then collegiate gymnastics and finally made the Olympic team. So, you know, I never even did another sport. It was a perfect fit for me from the beginning.
Wow. When you to look at a 9-year-old and say, "I committed fully," that is pretty intense. My daughter is almost 9 years old, and it's just like, I almost can't imagine that. What is that like? What does that mean to commit totally at that age? What does that mentally mean?
Well, I mean, I think at 9, you don't really think about the impact of that kind of commitment on your life. But, you know, I remember watching the women's gymnastics team win the gold medal, just inspired by it. I was like, "Hey, those gymnasts just won gold at the Olympics. I'm a gymnast. I can do that." Wow. And so, you know, it was just it was a spark that went off in my brain. And from that point, I was like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And I kind of opened my mind more to what my old teammates were telling me. And, you know, every now and then somebody would say, "Wow, you know, you're a pretty talented kid. If you do this, you might be able to make the Olympics one day." And I'm like, "Okay, well, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. I'm going to do it." And so I'm an open-minded person to the process. And I just, you know, I love the sport. It was a challenge for me. I was never like I said, I was never the best guy. I didn't win everything that I went to. I was always kind of in the pack though. And, you know, it's funny, my dad, he was a runner, most of his life. He loved to run. And every now and then I would run in these like little kids 1-mile races. And he used to tell me, "Don't try to win the race from the beginning." He said, "Stay in the pack." and at the very last second, sprint to the finish and see if you can pass everyone up.
Wow.
And that always was kind of how I was in gymnastics. I never won everything. And then towards the end of my career, as I matured, as I became an elite gymnast, I sprinted to the finish, and I was able to do a lot of things that gymnasts dream of that I'm very blessed to have been able to do.
Wow, what great advice from your dad, right? How much do your parents, you think, play into your success, the way they raised you, their advice?
Well, I mean, my parents were a huge part of my career, and they were there as just the perfect support system for me. I do a lot of motivational speaking around the country. I speak corporately. I go to different gyms and I work with the kids and the coaches and parents. And I always get this question from parents. They say, "What's the most important thing that we can do for our son or daughter?" And I always say, "Leave them alone." because because there's so many parents that try to get super involved and tell their kids, you need to be an NFL football player. Yo, you need to go be a Major League Baseball player. You need to do this. You need to do that. Versus, hey, we are so happy that you found a sport that you love, and we want to be here to support you, but we're never going to push you. And
Wow.
that's what my mom and dad did for me. They were always there 100% of the time. They went to my competitions and they did everything they could for me, but they never told me you have to go to the Olympics. That came from within myself.
And they gave you the room to really sort of find out what you're made of and where you wanted to go. I mean, I think it's great. It's great advice from
Yeah,
parents, man. So,
absolutely.
I remember in high school, we had a gym teacher, a gymnastics teacher, Mr. Naitri, and he was 50 years old. And the guy could do an iron cross, and I never
Oh, wow.
appreciated it. But I saw pictures of you on the internet doing an iron cross. I mean, how hard is that to do? I mean, that looks just impossible. Amazing.
Uh, you know, that skill, I mean, it's an iconic skill in my sport. Everybody knows the iron cross with the arms out to the side.
Right, right.
Um, it's one of the most miserable skills in the sport of gymnastics. There's nothing fun about doing an iron cross. I had somebody come up to me the other day. They were like, "Hey, what do I need to do to learn it?" And I was like, "Don't." I was like, "Don't." I was like, "Don't," because I've had 6 major surgeries in the last 5 years
What type
because
of
of gymnastics.
really? What type
Um,
of
I've
surgery?
had I've had 3 foot surgeries and 3 shoulder surgeries. I had surgery in my right shoulder, rotator cuff, supraspinatus and subscap, and full slap tear and partial bicep tear. And then I had a full pec tear. It came right off the bone that they had to replace. And then also recently, 10 months ago, well, actually 11 months ago now, the reason I didn't make 3 Olympic teams was because my supraspinatus in my left shoulder completely ruptured all the way through when I was training pommel horse. And
Wow.
I tell people, oh, also the foot injury. I had 3 surgeries to repair a Lisfranc Frank and broken, basically shattered bones from a bad landing on a vault in 2011. But, I'm actually pretty lucky. I'm 31 years old and I've had a very long career in the sport of gymnastics. Most guys retire when they're 21, 22 years old, right out of college, because their bodies can't handle the sport anymore. It's just too brutal on the body.
Right.
So I was able to last a really long time. I really took care of myself. I did, everything that I could right most of the time. But yeah, it just, it kind of kicks your butt from time to time. So I went off on a tangent there. I can't even remember what the original question was
No,
that
no,
we
no, that's
had.
fine. No, no,
I
that's
was
fine.
talking about it.
No, no, no. Well, let me ask you, just in terms of like, I guess injury, you do, obviously do you lift weights, or how do you prepare for the strength part of it? We were talking about the iron cross and stuff like that. Is there weightlifting that goes into it, or is just simply doing?
Oh yeah, no, yeah, yeah, no. So, I'll finish that question real quick with the iron cross. It's just that's one of the reasons my shoulders got beat up from doing so many iron crosses, inverted iron crosses where you're upside down doing it with your arms out to the side. I mean, it's just brutal. But in terms of getting ready for that, we do zero weight training in gymnastics.
Really?
You find yeah, you find a gymnast or two from time to time that will lift weights on the side, but we build our muscle, our bulk. Everything comes from the amount of calisthenic work that we do. A lot of push-ups and handstand push-ups, dips, and when you're a kid, you start doing a lot of these skills on the rings with somebody holding you in the proper position until you slowly develop the strength to hold yourself. I mean, it's a long, drawn out process, which is why, I've had 30 and 35-year-old guys come up to me and say, hey, is it too late for me to start gymnastics and compete one day? Sorry, but yeah.
Yeah. What is the ideal age to start?
It's one of those sports that you have to start from a young age. I had a teammate in college that started when he was 12, and it wasn't too late. And he ended up, getting a full scholarship to the University of Oklahoma and was an amazing gymnast. But that's pretty rare. Most people start anywhere from 4 to 9 years old, I would say.
Wow. Well, let me ask you. So in terms of, you've sort of gone about 10 years beyond where most people go in terms of gymnastics, right? You're 30, 31. What do you attribute that to, and how does, I guess, nutrition, talk us about, like, what do you attribute that to, and then how does nutrition fit in with that?
Well, I would say first, there's a little bit of luck. There's a genetic component to me lasting as long as I have. I'm only 5'1", 128 pounds, and I've, fairly light frame and strong. And I wouldn't say I'm the most flexible guy, but compared to your average person, I'm fairly flexible. And so it all kind of played its role in helping me. I would also say in terms of nutrition and diet, I wasn't always like I am now. I'm very focused on what I eat, what goes into my body at this point. And but when I was 16, 17, 18 years old, I had that same attitude as every teenage guy. I can eat whatever I want, and it's not going to affect me.
Right.
I wouldn't gain a pound. It didn't matter if I was eating, cheese, beef burritos for every single meal every day. I wasn't going to gain any weight, and I was going to perform fine. But when I turned probably 20, 21 years old, I felt a shift in my diet, or I felt a shift in my body. And, I think a lot of the guys in the sport, they continue to try to eat the way that they were, thinking they can survive. Whereas me, as soon as I felt my body kind of change, I became obsessed with my diet, with my nutrition, because I felt like I needed the edge. And so, I've always, from probably 21, 22 years old until now, very strict about what I put into myself. I measure my food. I weigh my food. I keep up with how much water I put into my body every single day. I try to eat 4, 5, 6 times a day, depending on what I'm getting ready for. And so, one of the things that I tell young gymnasts is, if you want to be an Olympian one day, I'm not going to guarantee that you can become an Olympian by becoming obsessed like I was, but becoming obsessed will help you get closer. And I had an obsession. And I think that sometimes that word has a bad connotation to it. Oh, wow, that person's obsessed with something. But, I was pretty much willing to go the extra distance and do whatever needed to be done physically, mentally, nutritionally to get to the Olympics.
If you had to say, it's sort of a silly question, I guess, but if you had to say what percentage of your ability to get to the Olympics was your mindset and what part of it was your genetics and your body, what would you say that was?
Ooh, man, that's a good question. I don't think I've ever gotten that question before. I almost want to say it's right now. So I tell people at the elite level in gymnastics, it's 90% mental, 10% physical. But that's at the elite level. I would say throughout my entire career, it's not too much different. I would say I got where I got because 75% of it came from right here in my head, where I told myself I'm going to do more than anybody else. I'm going to do things that other people aren't willing to do. And, because there were a lot of much more talented gymnasts that came through the sport than me, but they didn't have the mentality that I had. So I almost want to say 75-25.
Wow. I have to say, and all the people that we've interviewed and stuff like that, the people that have been very successful, yes, that is the answer they give. It seems to be that, the viewpoint, and I think the way the society is, obsession has gotten a bad sort of word. It's been taken in the wrong way. But the people that are actually successful are obsessed in their area, and not in a bad way. They're actually competing and they're having fun with it, and they're really actually winning with it. So thank you for that answer. I appreciate it. So,
oh yeah, no problem. I mean, it's it's one thing. There's a lot of great talented people in the world, not just athletes, but business people, salespeople, and I think a lot of them, they use their talent to rise and peak and become better. But it's another thing to maintain that level of performance. If you want your talent to actually continue to thrive, you have to be obsessed with what you're doing, because your talent alone doesn't keep you where you're at, because the rest of the world, you got a big target on your back when you're the best. The rest of the world wants to beat you. So you have to be willing to do other things to maintain and let your talent continue to elevate you.
But John, let me ask you then. So you're at the best. You are the top elite, right? There's got to be times when it does get to you, right? How do you handle yourself, or maybe not? Maybe has there ever been a time of self-doubt? Have you ever reached a point where you went, I don't know, man? Has there ever been that moment?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, probably the most important moment of my entire gymnastics career was when I thought I was the best. Like I had become overconfident, super cocky. I was 20 years old. I made my first world championship team, and in gymnastics, the world championships, it's as big as the Olympics, but it's the years leading up to the Olympics. So we have 3 world championships and then the Olympics every 4. Well, in order to get to the Olympics, one of the first steps you have to go through is to make the world team. So I make the world team. I'm like one of the best guys in the country at 20 years old. I think I'm hot stuff. And, I got to the competition and I didn't realize, how intense it was going to be. And I completely bombed. I let my head get to me. I fell 6 times. I let my team down completely. And we ended up, it's kind of a historic moment for me, because we finished in the worst place of any American team in international history. We finished 13th. And this was 2006, 2 years before the Olympics. And I completely doubted myself. I was like, wow, I thought I was really good. Apparently, I'm not as good as I thought. I can't handle pressure. I just competed against the greatest gymnasts from around the world, and I completely bombed. I let everyone down. I let my country down. And I almost quit the sport. I was in college, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Wow.
For lack of a better term, I finally pulled my head out of my rear end. And, I recommitted myself. I figured out some of the things I was doing wrong, and, started focusing on details a little bit more. This is another thing that I tell a lot of young gymnasts. I call it the champion's trap. You become great, you become the elite, and you forget about the little things. You forget about the details and coachability. Gymnastics is a sport based on perfection. I got so good at gymnastics, I started winning everything, and I stopped focusing on the perfection, the pursuit of perfection, and I bombed, and it really turned my career around. It made me focus more, and then luckily 2 years later, I redeemed myself. I made the Olympic team, and we went from 13th to 3rd, and we won a bronze medal.
Wow. Jonathan, when you say focus on the detail, right? What do you mean specifically by that? You're talking about like in terms of working out harder, or again, is it the nutrition or the mental viewpoint? And then how much, when you're at that Olympic level, how much is it on your body as far as exertion? What's the level of training? Are you working out 5 hours a day, 3 hours a day? What's that like?
Yeah. Well, in terms of the detail, I think it's different for everybody, whatever people are doing. If you're in business, or if you're, whatever it is people do, whatever their professions are, there's little things that help them get to where they are, whether it's the way they communicate with people. And there's skills that we learn growing up. And in gymnastics, there's basics and baby steps that we have to take to get where we want to go. And I think a lot of times, especially for me in my sport, I started learning these new routines. I started learning all of these new skills, and I became so good at what I was doing. I stopped focusing on those beginning skills and basics, and they slowly start to break down over time. And so little things like in gymnastics, it could have been a toe point. You have to have your toes pointed. Well, I learned this massive skill on the high bar, and everybody goes, ooh and ah, and before you know it, you're not focusing on the toes anymore. And so you get a small deduction there, and somebody says, hey, you're being deducted for that. And you're like, oh, shoot, I forgot. I'm making mistakes that I didn't realize because I didn't go back and baby step the process and work on the basics again. So, that's one of the reasons gymnastics is so complicated. It's, not trying to put down baseball, football, basketball, but it's not just running, throwing, hitting a ball. It's running, throwing, hitting yourself, and then also focusing on, the ball's flying through the air. How pretty does that ball look?
Right.
So, you want to, there's so many details that go into it. And, to answer your second question, the impact that this training and competition has on us, there's a tricky balance, because one competition alone, you only do 6 routines. Each routine lasts 60 to 90 seconds, but all of those routines, it's as much, it's an anaerobic sport. So it's how much energy and force can you put into 60 seconds, how much can you exert, and then it's over. And it feels like you run a marathon after every single routine. You're just exhausted. And so that's why we train anywhere from 4 to 6, sometimes even 8 hours a day to prepare for that. But you can't always do that. We have to take weeks where we do hardly anything. We come into the gym, we lay around on the floor, we stretch, we do foam rolling and TheraBand stuff. So it's a delicate balance, because you want to try to increase the longevity of the athletes. You don't want to break them down too fast. You don't want to peak too soon. And luckily, I have a coach that is as obsessed with the sport as me. His name's Tom Meadows. He was actually one of the coaches for the Olympic team in 2012, and he always did a great job at helping me peak at the right moments.
Wow. That's amazing. But let me ask you then, when you're in these kind of situations, and are there also support, like not only coaches, but are there chiropractors or healthcare professionals? Like, who else works with you in these kind of sports?
Yeah, so I had one really cool connection that I used like 6 to 8 years. There's actually a medical, I don't even know, it's like a medical company here in Houston, Texas, where I live, called Arasti. Have you ever heard of Arasti?
I have not, no.
Yeah, so Arasti treatment, it's chiropractors that also specialize in soft tissue recovery. And so I used to see my Arasti doctor probably 2-3 times a week, a doctor named Brian Gestel. And he put me back together all the time. I, have a strain in my bicep, and, it's all about, fascial repair and things like that. So I used to see him quite a bit. I used to do a lot of like the foam rolling and using lacrosse balls and things like that to roll out certain areas of my body. I had a trainer that was super important for me in college. I didn't have a hands-on trainer after I left college, but yeah, I'm the kind of person that if I have something that I can use, I'm going to use it, whether it's massage therapy or the Arasti doctors. It's really important. Recovery is just as important as training.
Great. And let me say, I heard a story that you were more excited about your bronze medal than your silver medal. Is that for some reason? Was that true? What's that story?
Yeah. So, everybody always wants to know about the silver medal. And I'm still waiting for the gold medal. I don't know where that one is yet. No, but the bronze, it meant a lot to me because, when the team was created in 2008 to go to Beijing, we had this phenomenal kind of a dream team. We had Paul and Morgan Hom, twin brothers that had gone to 2 Olympics already. And everybody was really counting on those guys to lead us to gold or silver or something like huge that Team USA hadn't done in many, many years. And right before we go to Beijing, both of them got hurt almost at the same time. Paul broke his hand, and Morgan broke his ankle. So all of a sudden, we've got this like renegade team. We bring on 2 alternate athletes, Raj Bhavsar or Alexander Artemev, and none of us had ever gone to the Olympics. A bunch of us were part of the team in 2006 that got 13th, where I bombed and everybody else was all over the place. And, the media and the rest of the world and coaches and athletes, everybody was like, well, there goes Team USA's chances of winning anything. In order to even get to the medal round of competition, you have to be top 8. People were counting us out, saying there was no way we were going to be top 8. We're not even going to get a chance to fight for a medal. So, we kind of had this magical competition. We caught fire that day, and, the camaraderie among the team and how much we cared about each other really showed. And when we edged out Germany We were right behind Japan. We almost even beat Japan.
Wow.
And so when we did that, it was just kind of like here we are, Team USA just had like a phenomenal performance. And when we stood on top of the medal podium, I mean, it felt like they were putting gold medals around our necks.
Wow. Very well done. Very well done. Jonathan, where do you see yourself? Like, what's the future? What's the next 5 years going to hold for you?
So right now, my life pretty much revolves around traveling and speaking. I've discovered my passion for standing up in front of a crowd and just sharing my story. I love to, I'll be traveling to local gyms, all year. Like I'll be going to Florida in a couple weeks, New Jersey. I'll be in California, all kinds of different places, working with the upcoming generation. Also, just being able to share my story corporately. I have, a lot of things happen in my life that I feel are relatable to just about anyone who's listening to me. And so, I'm hoping in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, I'm still doing that. I'm still standing on stage and just sharing my story. I kind of have a cool shtick, something that I do different than most speakers is I put a set of parallel bars up on the stage and I perform along with my speaking. So I do some cool tricks that kind of help me with my story. And, the crowd really gets into it. They love to see what I do. I do some kind of scary, dangerous stuff. It's very clear if I make a mistake, I'm going to be hurting the rest of the speech.
Right.
But I want to separate myself from other speakers and do something different.
Well, that certainly does it. Jonathan, part of the show, we're in search of the Holy Grail of health. So what, if I were to ask you, from what you've seen, you've been around athletes, I'm sure you've seen younger or older athletes. What would you say is the Holy Grail of health for people watching this?
Oh, man.
It's a tough question.
I'm going to give you a pretty generic answer, but it's something that has been important for me. And I believe you have to find a plan, find a diet that works for you, that makes you feel good, and then be consistent. So many people, they try these new diets and here, eat this, you'll lose 80 pounds in 3 days. And, people lose all this weight trying these new different things and then they quit. There's no consistency within the diet. And so I got to the point, okay, here's how much I'm going to eat during the week. And then I'm going to have what I call cheat meal on Saturday nights. And then I'm going to go right back to my diet after that. And so the more consistent I was, the better I felt, the more energy that I would have. And so, I know it's pretty generic. It's not the best answer, but I really believe that it's just being consistent and not being consistent with a bad diet, being consistent with something healthy.
No, I love it. It's a great answer. Jonathan, how would people that wanted to learn more about you or hear you speak, how would they find out about you?
People can follow me on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. My Twitter handle is J_Horton11. Instagram is JHorton11. So, I'm pretty active on social media. I try to get as many people to kind of see what's going on in my life daily.
Awesome. Jonathan Horton, thank you so much for being on the show. It was awesome.
All right. Thank you guys very much.
This episode is sponsored by New Jersey Foot and Ankle Center in Oradell, New Jersey. Remember, when you have a foot problem, you've got a foot doctor in the family. Weekend and evening appointments are available. Call us at 201-261-9445. Once again, that's 201-261-9445. Thanks for listening. Check out the show notes over at drdanspeaks.com. If you're loving the show, head over to iTunes and leave us a review, and we'll catch you next time. This episode is brought to you by Slate Media Productions. Provided by, for more information, Randy Ramos Jr. Slate Media to see and hear more of his work, visit randyramosjr.com.